The startup, named EasyPay, grew at a rate that defied normal business development. Within months, they had secure contracts with major retail chains across Nigeria. By the end of the first year, they had expanded to Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. Technological breakthroughs came with suspicious ease, coding problems solved overnight, server issues resolving themselves, competitors' systems mysteriously failing at crucial moments. Ezra noticed these anomalies but didn't question them, not even when his technical team expressed amazement at their luck. He simply worked harder, pushing himself and his growing staff to capitalize on each advantage. If success came partly through supernatural intervention, he would ensure it was built on a foundation solid enough to stand even without such help. Miriam gave birth to a daughter they named Imani, faith in Swahili. She was perfect, large dark eyes, a dusting of black hair, tiny fingers that wrapped around Ezra's thumb with surprising strength. As he held her for the first time, Ezra felt both overwhelming love and crushing guilt. This beautiful child would never know siblings, never have nieces or nephews, never cradle her own baby. Her branch of the family tree would end with her, pruned by her father's bargain before she took her first breath. "She has your eyes," Miriam whispered from the hospital bed, "and your determination. Look how she focuses already." Ezra kissed his daughter's forehead, making a silent promise. If Imani must bear the price of his ambition, he would ensure the life she lived was extraordinary. No luxury would be denied her, no opportunity withheld, no dream discouraged. As EasyPay's success continued, Ezra moved his family into progressively larger homes. The apartment gave way to a townhouse, which was replaced by a villa in an exclusive gated community. Miriam furnished each new space with thoughtful care, creating warmth despite the increasing grandeur. She volunteered at local schools and charities, refusing the idle life of a corporate wife despite Ezra's growing wealth. "Money changes circumstances, not purpose," she told him when he suggested she needn't work so hard. "I still want to make a difference." By Imani's third birthday, Ezra had become one of the most recognized entrepreneurs in Africa. EasyPay had revolutionized how small businesses process payments, lifting thousands out of poverty by connecting them to the formal economy. His rags to riches story inspired countless young Nigerians. In public, he attributed his success to hard work, strategic thinking, and the support of his family. In private, he sometimes caught himself staring at the pale crimson scar on his wrist, wondering how much of his empire was truly his creation. It was around this time that Miriam first mentioned having another child. "Imani would be such a wonderful big sister," she said one evening as they watched their daughter play in the garden of their villa. "And we're so blessed now. We could give another child a beautiful life." Ezra's heart constricted. "Let's wait a little longer," he suggested. "EasyPay is expanding into Europe next year. I'll be traveling constantly." Miriam accepted this excuse and the ones that followed over the next 2 years. But as Imani approached school age, Miriam's desire for another child intensified. "I've been thinking," she said one night as they prepared for bed in their master suite. "I'm 34 now. If we want another baby, we shouldn't wait much longer." Ezra busied himself with straightening items on his nightstand, avoiding her eyes. "The timing still isn't right. The American expansion is crucial." "It's always something, Ezra," Miriam said, a rare edge in her voice. "First Europe, now America. There will always be a new market, a new project. Meanwhile, our family stays on hold." He had no answer that wouldn't be a lie, so he said nothing. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. A week later, Miriam announced she had stopped taking her contraceptives. "I've been charting my cycle," she said with determination. "This is our window." Ezra made love to her that night, and many nights after, knowing with sick certainty that no child would come of their efforts. Each month when disappointment shadowed Miriam's face, guilt gnawed deeper into his conscience. After 6 months, she suggested they both get medical checkups. Ezra agreed, knowing what the doctors would find. The test showed he was perfectly fertile. Miriam's results revealed what the Crimson Circle had promised. Her womb, once capable of creating life, now rejected every possibility. "Secondary infertility," the specialist explained gently. "Sometimes it happens after a first successful pregnancy, often without clear cause. But there must be treatments," Miriam insisted. "Medications, procedures." The doctor outlined options: fertility drugs, intrauterine insemination, eventually in vitro fertilization. Ezra nodded and took notes, playing the role of supportive husband while knowing each attempt would fail. Thus began 3 years of increasingly invasive and expensive treatments. Miriam endured daily injections, surgical procedures, and emotional roller coasters of hope and disappointment. Ezra accompanied her to every appointment, held her through every failure, and continued to build his empire as if nothing were wrong. EasyPay expanded globally. Ezra acquired competing companies, diversified into adjacent technologies, and became a billionaire before his 40th birthday. From the outside, the Ademolas appeared blessed beyond measure: wealth, a beautiful home, a brilliant daughter, philanthropic impact. Only Ezra knew their prosperity was built on a foundation of blood, not sweat. Only he felt the weight of Miriam's unfulfilled longing, the price of his ambition measured in the children they would never have. And only he noticed how, with each failed treatment, the crimson scar on his wrist darkened slightly, as if feeding on Miriam's tears. As Ezra's wealth grew, so did the subtle signs of the bargain he had made. Beyond Miriam's unexplained infertility, other manifestations appeared. Minor at first, then increasingly difficult to ignore. Imani, now 7 years old, developed night terrors. She would wake screaming about the masked people watching her from the corners of her room. Child psychologists suggested it was a normal developmental phase, perhaps influenced by African tales from their heritage. Ezra knew better, especially when Imani described the masks in detail: a lion, an eagle, a serpent. "They say I'm special," Imani told him one night after a particularly bad episode. "That I'm not like other children because of what you did." Ezra's blood ran cold. "What did I do, sweetheart?" Imani's eyes, so like his own, regarded him solemnly. "I don't know. They won't tell me. But they say I'm the first and last, and that makes me precious." He held his daughter until she fell asleep, then checked the crimson mark on his wrist. It had darkened to the color of fresh blood, pulsing faintly with his heartbeat. A reminder that the bargain was not some distant, one-time transaction, but an ongoing covenant. Other signs manifested in his business life. Competitors who posed serious threats to EasyPay suffered improbable misfortunes, key employees suddenly quitting, critical infrastructure failing, unexpected regulatory investigations. Each time, Ezra benefited without having to take direct action, his path to greater success cleared by invisible hands. Most disturbing were the changes Ezra began to notice in himself. His ambition, once a fire that warmed him from within, had become a cold, calculating force. He found himself making decisions with ruthless efficiency, weighing human costs in ways that would have horrified his younger self. When a struggling division needed restructuring, he eliminated 5,000 jobs without hesitation. When a small competitor refused to sell, he orchestrated a campaign to destroy their reputation. "You've changed," Miriam told him after a charity gala where he had networked relentlessly, showing little interest in the actual cause. "Sometimes I look at you and wonder where the man I married has gone." "Success requires focus," he replied, adjusting his custom-made suit. "The more wealth we accumulate, the more we can help others in the long run." Miriam shook her head. "That's what you always say. But when does this long run arrive? Meanwhile, you miss Imani's school performances. You spend more time with shareholders than your family. And we've stopped talking about another child altogether." The last observation stung most sharply. After years of failed treatments, Miriam had finally accepted their daughter would be an only child. She rarely mentioned it now, which somehow made her silent grief more palpable. That night, Ezra dreamed of the abandoned mansion where he had made his bargain. In the dream, he wandered empty corridors that stretched impossibly long, hearing whispers from behind closed doors. When he finally found the circular room, the masked figures surrounded a golden cradle. Inside lay not a baby but a miniature version of himself, mouth open in a silent scream as wisps of golden light were extracted from its body into a crimson vessel. "The harvest continues," said the lion mask. "Your potential feeds many realms." Ezra woke drenched in sweat, the crimson mark burning. Beside him, Miriam murmured in her sleep, tears leaking from beneath her closed eyelids. He reached to comfort her but stopped, suddenly afraid his touch might somehow harm her further. The next day, during a board meeting, Ezra found himself unable to focus on the financial projections being presented. Instead, his attention kept returning to a small crimson stain on the boardroom wall that no one else seemed to notice. As he stared, the stain appeared to grow, spreading like living tendrils across the pristine surface. "Mr. Ademola?" His CFO's voice broke through his distraction. "Your thoughts on the Southeast Asian expansion?" Ezra blinked, and the stain vanished. "Proceed as planned," he said, regaining his composure. "Double the initial investment. I foresee exceptional growth potential there." The board members exchanged glances. The proposed investment was already aggressive, and doubling it seemed reckless. But none challenged him. Ezra's intuitive business decisions had made them all wealthy. If he sensed opportunity in Southeast Asia, they would follow his lead. Later that day, Ezra visited Imani's school for a parent-teacher conference. Ms. Osei, a young teacher who had always spoken highly of Imani's academic performance, seemed unusually reserved. "Imani is brilliant, as you know," she began, fidgeting with her pen. "Her test scores are consistently at the top of the class." "But," Ezra prompted, sensing her hesitation. Ms. Osei sighed. "She's becoming isolated. The other children find her intimidating. And some of her written work concerns me." She slid a composition book across the desk. Ezra opened it to find page after page of intricate drawings, masked figures surrounding a small girl, crimson lines connecting them like puppet strings. The final page showed the same girl, grown now, breaking those strings while standing atop a pyramid of small, childlike bodies. When I asked her about these images, Miss Osei continued, she said they were memories, not imagination. That these figures visit her at night and tell her about her purpose. "Mr. Ademola, has Imani been exposed to any unusual spiritual practices at home?" Ezra closed the book, forcing a reassuring smile. "Nothing beyond mainstream religion. She has an active imagination and perhaps watches too many movies. I'll speak with her." That evening, after putting Imani to bed, Ezra sat alone in his home office, surrounded by the trappings of his success. Awards lined the walls. Financial reports showed billions in assets. Outside the window, Legos sparkled, the city that had once rejected him now at his feet. Yet he felt hollow, haunted by his daughter's drawings and his own increasing awareness that the bargain he had made was extracting costs he hadn't anticipated. Not just Miriam's fertility, but something more fundamental, a corruption spreading through his family like a slow poison. Impulsively, Ezra unlocked a hidden safe behind a painting and withdrew a small box he hadn't opened in years. Inside lay the black card with the crimson address, the card that had led him to the Crimson Circle a decade earlier. He had kept it, though he wasn't entirely sure why. The embossed address caught the light, seeming to pulse with the same rhythm as the mark on his wrist. Ezra made his decision. He would return to where this began. He would demand answers, perhaps even a renegotiation. His power and wealth surely counted for something now. He was no longer the desperate young man they had exploited. He slipped the card into his pocket and left his office, pausing at Imani's room to check on her. Through the cracked door, he saw her sitting upright in bed, her eyes closed but her lips moving in conversation with empty air. Or what appeared to be empty air. As Ezra watched, the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to deepen and take form, gathering around his daughter's bed like attentive listeners. "Yes, I'll tell him," Imani said to the darkness. "I'll tell him it's time to return." Ezra backed away silently, heart pounding. Whatever forces he had entangled his family with, they were watching, waiting, communicating through his child. The realization crystallized his resolve. He would confront the Crimson Circle not from weakness but from strength. He would demand a way to protect Imani from their influence, even if it meant sacrificing the empire he had built. What he wouldn't acknowledge, even to himself, was the deeper fear taking root in his heart, that perhaps protection wasn't possible anymore. That in selling his wife's fertility, he had actually sold much more, and the true price of his bargain was only beginning to come due. The abandoned mansion looked exactly as it had a decade ago, decaying exterior hiding immaculate interiors, a physical impossibility that Ezra now recognized as his first clue that he was dealing with forces beyond normal understanding. The gates opened at his approach, just as before, though this time Ezra came not as a desperate supplicant but as a billionaire, his custom Bentley purring to a stop on the overgrown driveway. He had told Miriam he had an unexpected business meeting. Another lie in a marriage increasingly built on them. Sometimes he wondered if she knew, if the woman who had once known his every thought could sense the darkness he carried, if she chose not to confront it out of love or fear. The front door swung open before he could knock. Inside, candles illuminated the foyer, though no human hand had lit them. Ezra stepped across the threshold, immediately enveloped by the same unnatural stillness he remembered from his first visit. "A triumphant return," said a familiar voice. The tall man in the crimson suit emerged from shadows that seemed too shallow to have concealed him. "The circle has been expecting you." "Have they?" Ezra kept his voice level, projecting the confidence he had developed in boardrooms and investor meetings. "Then they know why I've come." "To question what was freely given," the Mun replied, his perfect smile unchanging. "To seek amendment to a contract clearly stated." "To protect my daughter," Ezra corrected. "She's being affected in ways that weren't part of our agreement." The man's smile widened slightly. "All agreements have implications beyond the explicitly stated terms. Surely a businessman of your caliber understands this." He gestured toward the double doors leading to the circular room. They opened of their own accord, revealing the familiar crimson-lit space. The same 7 figures sat around the table, wearing the same masks, in the same positions, as if they had remained frozen in place for 10 years, waiting for his return. "Ezra Ademola," said the lion mask. The voice was exactly as he remembered, female, authoritative, ageless. "You have prospered." "As you promised," Ezra acknowledged, approaching the table with measured steps. "But there are complications you didn't mention." "Such as?" asked the serpent. "My daughter has night terrors. She sees your masks in her dreams. She draws disturbing images. She speaks to shadows." Ezra placed his hands on the table, leaning forward. "This wasn't part of our bargain." "Your bargain," said the eagle, "was the exchange of reproductive potential for material success. The terms were fulfilled precisely." "Your daughter exists in a unique position," added the hyena. "The only child of a bloodline that should have birthed hundreds. Such concentration creates sensitivity." "I want it stopped," Ezra demanded. "Whatever influence you're exerting over her, end it." Silence fell around the table. The masks turned toward each other as if in silent conference. Finally, the lion spoke again. "You misunderstand the nature of our arrangement, Mr. Ademola. We do not control your daughter's perceptions. She simply sees what exists. The veil between worlds is thinner for her because of what you sacrificed." "Then I want to renegotiate," Ezra said firmly. "I'll give back some of what I've gained. Wealth can be surrendered. Just leave Imani alone." Watch out for the next part. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, drop your comments, and share with your loved ones. See you in the next video.